I remember the taste of recaf mixed with blood when the mutiny began. My name is Lucien Ashavar, last bearer of a warrant of trade signed by the Emperor himself in the 31st millennium. I was born into wealth beyond measure, commanding a fleet worth more than entire worlds. You think that makes me fortunate, but you don't know the price of freedom in a galaxy that demands conformity. I've watched my family torn apart by rivals who smiled while poisoning our wine. I've lost ships to the warp, crew to madness, fortunes to xenos treachery. The warrant promised unlimited authority beyond the Imperium's light. What it delivered was a slow death among the stars, where every ally is a future enemy and every profit comes written in blood. This is how rogue traders die, not gloriously, but inevitably. Chapter 1. Lucien's Inheritance. The day I inherited the warrant, I was 19 and drunk on Amasek in a pleasure house on Footfall. My father's body hadn't even cooled on the bridge of the Eternal Prophet when the courier found me. The man wore the formal robes of our dynasty's household, his face professionally neutral, despite finding the heir to a trillion-throne fortune face down on silk cushions with two companions whose names I'd already forgotten. "Lord Ashavar," he said, extending a sealed data slate. "The rogue trader is dead. The warrant passes to you." I remember laughing, actually laughing. My father, stern, brilliant, ruthless Victor Ashavar, was dead at 53. A plasma conduit rupture during combat with Eldar pirates, the courier explained. Quick and relatively clean, as deaths in the void go. I stopped laughing when the weight of inheritance actually hit me. The Ashavar Warrant of Trade dated back 9,000 years. 57 rogue traders had carried it before me, each one expanding our dynasty's wealth and influence across the Coronis expanse. We owned 3 capital ships, 23 support vessels, trading posts on 40 worlds, and commercial agreements with Forge worlds, Hive worlds, and even a few xenos civilizations that the Imperium officially pretended didn't exist. The warrant gave us authority to trade beyond Imperial space, to negotiate with aliens, to establish colonies in the Emperor's name. It made us royalty of the void, answerable to no planetary governor or sector lord. Only the High Lords of Terror could revoke our charter. It also made us targets for everyone who wanted what we had. I sobered up quickly and took the next shuttle to the Eternal Prophet, our flagship. The ship was a lunar-class cruiser, 8 kilometers of adamantium and fury, built in the shipyards of Mars 3,000 years before I was born. My grandfather had won it in a wager with another dynasty. My father had upgraded its weapon systems with archaeotech recovered from a space hulk. Now it was mine. The crew assembled in the observation deck as I boarded. 3,000 souls who formed the core of our operation. Officers in formal uniforms. Tech priests maintaining the ship's ancient systems. Navigator House representatives whose bloodlines allowed them to see the Astronomicon and guide us through the warp. Astropaths to communicate across the void. Armsmen to enforce order. And the common crew, pressed men and volunteers, criminals seeking redemption and believers seeking fortune, all of them looking at me. The drunk teenager who'd just inherited command of their lives. Seneschal Mordecai stepped forward, my father's right hand for 30 years, a man whose face seemed carved from granite and whose mind calculated profit margins faster than most cogitators. He was 68 years old and had probably forgotten more about void trade than I'd ever learn. "Lord Ashavar," he said formally, offering me the Warrant of Trade itself. The physical document, sealed in a stasis case that had preserved it across 9 millennia. The Emperor's own seal visible through the transparent casing, a golden aquila that hurt to look at directly, as if divinity itself had been pressed into the wax. I took it, feeling the weight of history and expectation. "The crew awaits your first command, Lord Ashavar," Mordecai continued. Traditionally, new rogue traders address their inheritance by stating their intentions. I hadn't prepared a speech, hadn't expected to inherit for another 30 years. My father was supposed to teach me the trade, introduce me to the contacts, show me how to navigate the treacherous politics of the expanse. Instead, he died and left me drowning in responsibilities I didn't understand. I looked at the assembled crew. Hard faces, most of them. These weren't Imperial Navy sailors following orders from Terra. They were void-born merchants and pirates and explorers who'd chosen to serve the Ashavar dynasty because we paid well and usually survived our ventures. They expected leadership, strength, vision. I gave them honesty instead. "I'm 19 years old," I said, my voice echoing in the observation deck. "I'm unprepared, unqualified, and frankly terrified. My father had 34 years of experience when he died. I have 9 months of half-hearted apprenticeship and a reputation for drinking too much and taking stupid risks." Murmurs ran through the assembly. Mordecai's face remained neutral, but I saw calculation in his eyes. He was measuring me, deciding whether I'd survive long enough to be worth serving, or if he should start preparing to serve my cousin Elena, who had considerably more experience and considerably fewer vices. "But," I continued, "I'm the warrant bearer now. That makes me your rogue trader, by law and tradition. I don't know everything my father knew. I don't have his contacts or his tactical genius. But I have this," I raised the warrant case, "and I have you. The crew that made Victor Ashavar legendary. The people who know how this dynasty actually works." I lowered the case and met Mordecai's eyes directly. "So here's my first command as rogue trader. Teach me, all of you. Show me what I need to know to keep us alive and profitable. I'll make mistakes. Emperor knows I'll make hundreds of them, but I'll learn, and I'll listen to people who know better than I do." Silence in the observation deck. Then, surprisingly, applause. Not universal. Some officers looked skeptical. Some armsmen looked disgusted, but enough to matter. They'd expected arrogance or false bravado. I'd given them vulnerability and pragmatism. It was the first smart decision I'd made in weeks. Mordecai approached after the assembly dispersed. "That was either brilliant or suicidal, Lord Ashavar. Possibly both." "What did my father do when he inherited?" "Your father," Mordecai said carefully, "declared that the Ashavar dynasty would double its wealth within 5 years. Then he led us on 3 consecutive high-risk ventures that nearly bankrupted us before the 4th one struck rich. He was 43, experienced and confident. You are none of those things. So what should I do?" He studied me with those calculating eyes. "The honest approach might work. The crew respects competence, but they also respect someone who knows their limitations. But Lord Ashavar, Lucien, you need to understand something fundamental about being a rogue trader." "What's that?" "Everyone wants you dead." I blinked. "What?" "Your cousin Elena wants the warrant and has support from the militant faction who think you're too weak. Rival dynasties want to absorb our assets and eliminate the competition. The administrator wants to tax us into irrelevance. The Inquisition suspects we traffic with xenos, which we do. Pirates see our ships as prizes. Xenos see us as either trading partners or prey depending on current politics. And that's just the obvious threats." He pulled out a data slate and handed it to me. I scanned the contents. A list of people and organizations, each one tagged with threat assessment ratings and probability calculations. There were 47 entries marked immediate threat. "This is insane," I said. "This is standard," Mordecai corrected. "Your father managed these threats through a combination of ruthlessness, cunning, and strategic alliances. He knew who to bribe, who to threaten, and who to kill before they killed him. And I'm supposed to learn all of this. Quickly, very quickly. Because Lord Ashavar, several of these factions already know your father is dead. They're calculating right now whether you're worth supporting or eliminating. Your first 100 days will determine whether the Ashavar dynasty continues or dies with you." I looked at the warrant case in my hands. 9,000 years of family history. 57 rogue traders who'd carried this authority and survived, or at least survived long enough to pass it to an heir. Now it was mine, and everyone wanted me dead. "Where do we start?" I asked. Mordecai smiled, the first genuine expression I'd seen from him. We start by getting you drunk one last time, because starting tomorrow, you won't have time for pleasure houses and amasek. Tomorrow, you become what the warrant demands, a merchant prince of the void. And if I fail, then the Ashavar dynasty ends. The warrant passes to your cousin or reverts to terror, and our 3,000 crew members lose their livelihoods. No pressure, Lord Ashavar. He walked away, leaving me alone in the observation deck with the warrant and the weight of 3,000 lives. I looked out at the void beyond the armored windows. Footfall Station orbited below us, a massive construct of metal and trade where fortunes were made and lost daily. Beyond it, the Coronis expanse stretched away into unmapped darkness, a region of space where Imperial law meant nothing and only strength and cunning mattered. That was my inheritance. Not just ships and wealth, but freedom in a galaxy that killed free people. I was 19 years old. I was unprepared. I was probably going to die. But for now, I was the rogue trader. Over the next weeks, Mordecai subjected me to an education that made Imperial scholar training look gentle. I learned void commerce, how to calculate profit margins, accounting for warp travel time, crew mortality rates, and pirate interdiction probability. I learned dynasty politics, who owed us favors, who we owed, and who was waiting for us to show weakness so they could strike. I learned weapons training from our master-at-arms, a former Imperial Guard sergeant who'd lost his left arm and his entire regiment to an Orc war and signed on with us for steady pay and occasional violence. He taught me that a rogue trader needed to know how to handle a plasma pistol, a power sword, and a boarding axe because negotiations frequently ended in murder. I learned ship command from our bridge officers, spending 16-hour shifts watching them coordinate thousands of crew members across 8 kilometers of vessel. I learned that commanding a starship wasn't like commanding a ground force. Everything happened in 3 dimensions, across distances that made light speed delay a tactical concern. I learned warp navigation from our navigator, Lady Irina of House Belisarius, whose third eye could see the Astronomican's light and plot courses through the immaterium. She was 70 years old and had served 3 rogue traders. She explained that warp travel was gambling with your life. Every jump could go perfectly, or could throw you into the warp's nightmares where demons waited. And I learned the economics of survival from Mordecai, who explained that being a rogue trader meant managing cash flow across ventures that might take years to pay off. We needed constant income to pay the crew, maintain the ships, and bribe officials. That meant taking contracts even when they were risky. Especially when they were risky, because risk paid better than safe runs. Your father's death leaves us in a difficult position, Mordecai explained during one of our daily briefings. We have outstanding debts to a Forge World for those weapon upgrades. We have contracts to fulfill with merchant guilds on 3 systems. And we have rivals who are actively trying to poach our trade routes. So what do? We take a high-profit contract to stabilize our finances, prove to the Expanse that the Ashavar dynasty is still functional despite your father's death. He pulled up a hololithic display showing a star system I didn't recognize. Port Wanda, a merchant consortium, needs a shipment of xenotech delivered to a research station in the Processional of the Damned. High risk, the route passes through areas with reported warp anomalies and possible pirate presence. But the payment is 3 million thrones plus salvage rights to anything we find en route. 3 million thrones, enough to clear our immediate debts and fund operations for 6 months. What's the catch? The xenotech is Eldar artifacts. Technically legal since we have a warrant, but the Inquisition takes interest in anyone trafficking Eldar goods. And the Processional of the Damned has that name for a reason. 2 ships vanished there in the last year. High risk, high reward. High probability that I'd die in my first major venture as rogue trader. When do we leave? I asked. Mordecai smiled. Tomorrow. Welcome to the life, Lord Ashavar. I was 19 years old, commanding a starship worth more than most planets, carrying authority that made me royalty beyond the Imperium's borders. And I was probably going to die in the Processional of the Damned. The doomed life of a rogue trader had begun. Chapter 2. The Processional of the Damned. The warp transit to the processional took 4 days subjectively, 12 days objectively. Time doesn't flow consistently in the immaterium. You enter the warp thinking you'll spend 3 days in transit and emerge to find a week has passed. Or sometimes you spend what feels like a month and emerge to find only hours have elapsed. Navigator Irina explained it as the warp's joke on those who try to impose order on chaos. I hated it. During warp transit, I couldn't sleep properly. The Eternal Prophet's Geller fields kept the demons out, usually, but you could still feel them pressing against the ship's reality bubble. Dreams became vivid and disturbing. Crew members reported seeing things in the corridors that vanished when they looked directly. The astropaths suffered worst, their psychic sensitivity making them vulnerable to the warp's whispers. We lost 2 crew members during transit. One jumped from an observation deck into the void, screaming about eyes in the darkness. Another simply vanished from his bunk, there one moment, gone the next, his blanket still warm. Acceptable losses, Mordecai said when I expressed horror. Your father once lost 30 crew during a 6-month warp voyage. 2 dead is fortunate. I was learning that acceptable losses was a phrase rogue traders used frequently. We emerged from the warp at the edge of the processional system, our sensors immediately scanning for threats. The system was a graveyard, dozens of dead ships drifting in the void, their hulls torn open by weapons fire or warp exposure. Some were centuries old, their reactors long cold. Others looked recent, still venting atmosphere from breached sections. "Welcome to the processional," Navigator Irina said dryly. 15 generations of failed voidfarers, all waiting to become our neighbors. Our augurs detected the research station we were supposed to deliver to. Outpost Meridian, built into an asteroid that orbited the system's dead star. The station transmitted standard Imperial authentication codes, confirming they were expecting our shipment. "Straight run," I said, studying the tactical display. 6 hours at current speed. "Nothing in the void is ever a straight run," Master-at-Arms Krenkov said. He was checking weapons systems, making sure our defensive batteries were ready. "Those wrecks are perfect ambush points. Pirates love this system." "Can we scan the wrecks? Make sure nothing's hiding in them." "We can scan," our chief tech priest, Magos Vex, replied in his augmented voice. "But if they're running silent, we won't detect them until they power up weapons." So we proceeded carefully, our void shields at maximum, our weapons armed, our crew at battle stations. The Eternal Prophet moved through the debris field like a swimmer moving through corpses. Careful, alert, expecting attack at any moment. It came at hour 3. "Contact!" Our sensor officer's voice cracked across the bridge vox. Multiple ships powering up from inside Wreck Delta 7. Raider-class vessels, at least 4 of them. The tactical display lit up with hostile contacts. 4 ships. Fast, predatory voidcraft designed for hit-and-run attacks. Not a match for a Lunar-class cruiser in direct combat, but dangerous if they coordinated their assault. "Evasive maneuvers," I ordered. "Return fire as targets come into range." The Eternal Prophet was built for war, but it wasn't nimble. 8 kilometers of adamantium and weapon systems don't turn quickly. The raiders darted around us like sharks around a whale, their lances stabbing at our void shields. "Shields holding at 87%, Vex reported. "Enemy fire insufficient to breach." "Target the lead ship," I said. Full broadside. Our starboard weapons batteries opened fire, macro cannons and lances converging on a single raider. The enemy ship's shields flared and collapsed. Our second volley tore through its hull, splitting the vessel open. Atmosphere vented, bodies tumbled into void, and the ship went dark. "One down!" Krenkov shouted with satisfaction. But the other 3 raiders were adapting, spreading out to attack from multiple vectors. Their strategy was clear. Keep moving, avoid our broadsides, wear down our shields with sustained fire. "They're trying to disable our engines," Mordecai observed. Classic pirate tactic. Cripple us, then board at their leisure. Can they actually do that? If we let them? Yes. A Lunar class is powerful but not invulnerable. If they concentrate fire on our drive section, an impact rocked the ship, a torpedo strike against our aft shields. The bridge lights flickered as power redistributed. "Aft shields at 40%, Vex reported. "Another hit like that, and they'll breach." I looked at the tactical display, trying to think tactically like my father would. We couldn't outmaneuver them. We couldn't flee. Our cargo contract required delivery. That left fighting, but fighting defensively would just let them wear us down. So we'd fight offensively. "Prepare boarding torpedoes," I ordered. "Load assault teams. We're going to take one of those raiders." Mordecai stared at me. "Lord Ashavar, that's insane?" "Probably, but they won't expect it. They think we're a merchant vessel trying to defend ourselves. We're going to attack." Krenkov grinned savagely. "Finally, someone with your father's aggression. I'll lead the boarding party personally." "No," I said. "I'm leading it." The bridge went silent. "Lord Ashavar," Mordecai said carefully, "the warrant bearer does not participate in boarding actions. Your death would end the dynasty. My death would happen anyway if we lose this fight. And the crew needs to see that I'm willing to risk what I ask them to risk." I stood up from the command throne. "Mordecai, you have the bridge. Don't let them destroy my ship. Krenkov, get me a carapace suit and a plasma pistol. We're about to go pirate hunting." Boarding actions are controlled chaos. You load into a torpedo, a reinforced projectile designed to penetrate enemy ships, and deploy assault teams directly into their corridors. You spend 90 seconds in a cramped metal cylinder with 20 other armsmen, listening to the launch mechanisms prime. Then you're fired across the void at several hundred meters per second, hoping the enemy's shields don't vaporize you before impact. We hit Raider 3 amidships, our boarding torpedo punching through their hull like a fist through wet parchment. The impact would have killed everyone inside if we weren't strapped into shock harnesses designed to distribute the force. The torpedo's assault ramp blew open with explosive bolts, and we poured into the enemy ship. Immediately, las fire filled the corridor. Pirate defenders, poorly equipped, poorly trained, but numerous, fired from barricaded positions. One of our armsmen went down immediately, her face vaporized by a lucky shot. "Forward," Krenkov roared, firing his combat shotgun. "Take that barricade." I'd trained with weapons, but never used them in actual combat. The plasma pistol felt heavy in my hand, its charging coils whining as the weapon built up energy. I aimed at a pirate leaning around a corner and pulled the trigger. The superheated plasma bolt hit him center mass, instantly vaporizing his torso. The body collapsed, and I felt absolutely nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, just the immediate need to survive the next second. We pushed forward through the ship, fighting room by room. The pirates outnumbered us but were disorganized, trying to repel us while simultaneously handling damage from our cruiser's continued fire. We reached their bridge in 12 minutes, killing everyone who resisted and accepting the surrender of those who didn't. Their captain was a woman maybe 40 years old, scarred and augmented, missing her left eye. She stood defiantly, even with 10 guns pointed at her. "The great Ashavar dynasty," she spat, "sending children to do murder. I'm old enough to kill pirates," I said, "and young enough to not care about pretending this is honorable. You attacked my ship. Your crew dies or surrenders. Choose." She looked at me with that one remaining eye, calculating. "Your father would have negotiated." "My father's dead. I'm less patient." "Fine, we surrender. Traditional terms. We walk away with our lives. You take the ship." "No. You tell me who hired you to attack vessels in the processional, or I space your entire crew and take the ship anyway." Her expression flickered, surprise, then fear. "If I tell you, I'm dead anyway. If you don't tell me, you're dead right now. At least this way you have a chance." She hesitated, then, "House Arventis. They're trying to monopolize trade in the processional. Anyone else who operates here gets hit by pirates who are actually Arventis privateers. They know you're carrying xenotech and don't want competition. House Arventis, another rogue trader dynasty, rivals to the Ashavars for 3 generations. My father had outmaneuvered them on several lucrative contracts. Now they were using my inexperience to eliminate us." "Thank you," I said. Then I shot her, The plasma bolt took her in the chest, killing her instantly. Her crew screamed, thinking we'd betray the surrender terms. But I pointed the pistol at the deck. "She just told me this was an assassination attempt against House Ashavar," I said loudly. "That makes her crew complicit in an attack on a warrant bearer. That's a death sentence under Imperial law. But you," I gestured to the surviving pirates, "can walk away if you swear on the Emperor that you will testify against House Arventis when this goes to tribunal." I was making it up as I went along. I had no idea if there would be a tribunal or if testimony would matter. But the pirates didn't know that. They swore. We let them take lifeboats and ejected them into the void to be picked up by whoever found them. Then we took control of the captured raider and limped back to the Eternal Prophet with a prize ship worth 200,000 thrones. Mordecai met me in the hangar bay as I climbed out of the boarding torpedo. "Lord Ashavar, that was either brilliant or insane. Everyone keeps saying that about my decisions. Because it's consistently true. You captured a raider, eliminated the pirate threat, and extracted intelligence about House Arventis. Your father would be proud. My father would have negotiated without firing a shot. Your father," Mordecai said quietly, "died doing things his way. You're alive doing things your way. Right now, I'll take alive over perfect." We completed the delivery to Outpost Meridian without further incident. The research station paid us 3 million thrones as contracted, plus a bonus for clearing the pirate presence. We also kept the captured raider as salvage, adding it to our fleet. My first venture as rogue trader, successful. My first taste of how the void actually worked. Bitter. I'd killed people, made decisions that condemned others, lied and manipulated and done whatever it took to survive. And I'd do it again tomorrow, because that's what rogue traders do. We survive. At any cost. Chapter 3. House Arventis responds. The tribunal never happened. 3 weeks after our return to Footfall Station, House Arventis filed a formal complaint with the station magistrate, claiming we'd attacked their merchant vessels without provocation. They produced falsified records showing their ships were legitimate traders, not pirates. They demanded compensation for our unlawful seizure of the raider we'd captured. I sat in the magistrate's chambers, listening to their representative, a smooth-faced lawyer named Kelso, who smiled while accusing me of piracy, and realized this was how dynasties died. Not in glorious void battles, but in bureaucratic assassination. Legal challenges that drained resources, accusations that destroyed reputations, death by 1,000 administrative cuts. "The evidence is clear," Kelso said, projecting hololithic images of the merchant vessels we'd destroyed. House Ashavar opened fire on unarmed traders, killed their crews, and stole their property. Under the Lex Imperialis, this constitutes piracy. We demand full restitution plus punitive damages totaling 17 million thrones. 17 million. More than we had in liquid assets. Paying it would bankrupt us, force us to sell ships and trading posts. Exactly what House Arventis wanted. Magistrate Callus, a grey-haired woman who'd adjudicated void disputes for 40 years, looked at me expectantly. "Lord Ashavar, your response?" I stood, feeling every eye in the chamber on me. But standing there facing destruction of my dynasty, I decided honesty might work better than legal maneuvering. "Magistrate, everything House Arventis says is technically accurate. We did attack their vessels. We did seize their property. But context matters, and here's the context they're not mentioning." I pulled up my own hololithic display, combat logs from the Eternal Prophet, showing how the merchant vessels had powered up weapons and attacked us first. Sensor records showing they'd been hiding in wrecks, waiting in ambush. Testimony from the captured pirates confirming House Arventis had hired them. House Arventis has been running a protection racket in the processional. Attack any competition. Blame it on pirates. Monopolize the trade routes. We simply refuse to be victims. Kelso laughed. "This is desperate fabrication from a teenager trying to justify murder. The combat logs could be falsified. The testimony was extracted under duress. And frankly, Magistrate, Lord Ashavar lacks the experience to distinguish legitimate traders from pirates. That last part stung because it was partially true. I was inexperienced. I had made mistakes, and everyone in the chamber knew it. Perhaps, I said quietly. But Magistrate, I'm not asking you to take my word. I'm asking you to investigate. Send auditors to House Arventis. Examine their financial records. See if they've been claiming losses on merchant vessels while simultaneously reporting increased profits from trade monopolies. The numbers won't lie. Kelso's smile faltered. That's absurd. You can't just demand investigation of a rival dynasty because you're losing a legal challenge. Actually, Magistrate Callus interrupted, I can order investigation if probable cause exists, and Lord Ashavar has presented sufficient evidence to warrant inquiry. She looked at me appraisingly. This tribunal is suspended pending full audit of both House Ashavar and House Arventis financial records. We'll reconvene in 3 months. Kelso started to protest, but Callus silenced him with a gesture. Dismissed. Both parties. I left the chambers feeling like I'd won a temporary reprieve, but not a victory. 3 months wasn't much time to prepare for whatever House Arventis would do next. Mordecai met me outside. Well played. Your father would have approached it differently, but you achieved the same result. Delay while we gather resources. What will House Arventis do now? He looked at me seriously. Assassination, Lord Ashavar. They'll try to kill you. The attempt came 2 days later. I was inspecting cargo manifests in our footfall warehouse when the servitors went haywire. The lobotomized workers suddenly turned on living crew members, their industrial arms swinging with lethal force. One servitor grabbed a dock worker and crushed his spine before anyone could react. Scrap code infection, Magos Vex shouted through the Vox. Someone's broadcasting corrupted machine code. All servitors are compromised. I drew my plasma pistol as a servitor lurched toward me, its cargo-lifting claws reaching. I fired, vaporizing its cranial implants. The body collapsed, but there were dozens more servitors in the warehouse, all converging on living humans. Evacuate, I ordered. Get everyone out. We retreated through the warehouse as servitors tore through cargo and crew alike. I saw a man literally torn in half by industrial equipment. Another crushed beneath falling crates as servitors deliberately toppled the storage racks. We sealed the blast doors behind us, trapping the corrupted servitors inside. 23 crew members didn't make it out. That was House Arventis, Krenkov said, reloading his combat shotgun. Scrap code attacks are their signature move. They have tech priests specializing in machine corruption. Another 27 injured, all because House Arventis couldn't compete honestly. Find them, I told Krenkov. Find the tech priest who broadcast that scrap code. I want them alive. It took 8 hours of investigation, but we identified the culprit, a tech priest named Hermeticus, who'd been hired by House Arventis to corrupt our servitors. Krenkov's armsmen found him in a low-level hab, trying to book passage off station. They brought him to me in chains. Hermeticus was young for a tech priest, maybe 40, with only moderate augmentation. His mechadendrites writhed nervously as I approached. Lord Ashavar, he stammered. I claim sanctuary under Mechanicus law. You claim nothing, I interrupted. You killed 23 of my crew. You corrupted sacred machine spirits. The Mechanicus doesn't protect tech priests who abuse their knowledge for murder. I was hired. House Arventis paid me to... And now you're going to testify to that in front of Magistrate Callus, providing the evidence we need to bury House Arventis legally. His augmented eyes flickered with fear. If you don't testify, I'll kill you. Choose which risk you prefer. The second tribunal convened 4 weeks after the first. This time, we had Hermeticus, the corrupted servitor's code logs, and financial records showing House Arventis had paid for the assassination attempt. The evidence was overwhelming. Kelso tried to argue that Hermeticus was acting independently, that House Arventis had no knowledge of his actions, that the financial records were circumstantial. But Magistrate Callus wasn't buying it. House Arventis, she declared, is found guilty of attempted murder of a warrant bearer, corruption of sacred technology, and fraudulent misrepresentation in trade. The penalties are as follows: 17 million throne fine, the exact amount they demanded from House Ashavar, revocation of trading rights in the processional, and a formal apology to be entered into station records. Kelso went pale. Magistrate, that's excessive. That's justice. House Arventis attempted to murder a rival and hide behind legal fiction. They failed. Court dismissed. I watched Kelso leave, his confident swagger replaced by defeated shuffling. We'd won. House Ashavar had survived its first major challenge under my leadership. Mordecai found me afterward in a quiet observation deck overlooking Footfall's docking bays. Congratulations, Lord Ashavar. You've proven yourself a worthy successor to your father. By surviving an assassination attempt and legal warfare? That's the standard? That's exactly the standard. Your father survived 42 assassination attempts over his career. You're at 1. Welcome to being a rogue trader. I looked out at the void beyond the station. Somewhere else, another rival was calculating whether I was weak enough to challenge. And beyond them all, the galaxy itself was trying to kill me through pirates, xenos, warp storms, and 1,000 other hazards. How did my father do this for 34 years? The knowledge that every day survived was a victory against impossible odds. He became addicted to the game. Then you'll die, Mordecai said bluntly. Because this is the game, Lord Ashavar. Every day, someone is trying to kill you, or bankrupt you, or steal what you have. You either learn to love the fight, or you break under the pressure. There's no third option. He left me alone with that thought. I spent the next hour watching ships come and go from Footfall's docking bays. Merchant vessels loaded with goods from 100 worlds. Military ships on patrol. Other rogue traders' flagships. Each one representing another dynasty playing the same deadly game. My father had done this for 34 years. 57 generations of Ashavars before him had carried the warrant and survived, or at least survived long enough to pass it on. Now it was my turn. I was 19 years old. I'd killed people. I'd been nearly killed myself. I'd navigated legal battles and survived assassination. And according to Mordecai, this was just the beginning. The doomed life of a rogue trader, Except I was starting to understand. We weren't doomed to die. We were doomed to fight. Every single day against impossible odds for profit margins and survival and the freedom to operate beyond Imperial restrictions. Some people would find that horrifying. I was starting to find it exhilarating. 3 months after the tribunal, we undertook our second major venture. A forge world designated Metallica 7 needed raw materials from an asteroid field deep in unexplored space. The payment was substantial. 8 million thrones plus rights to keep 20% of any xenotech we discovered during resource extraction. The catch was that the asteroid field was rumored to be a tomb world of the Necrons. Rumored, Mordecai emphasized. No confirmed sightings, just disappearances and sensor ghosts. So either we get rich mining valuable resources, or we wake up ancient murder robots who've been sleeping for 60 million years. Essentially, yes. I looked at my senior staff assembled around the briefing table. Mordecai with his calculating patience, Krenkov with his eager bloodlust, Magos Vex with his mechanical precision, Navigator Irina with her ancient wisdom. These people had served my father loyally. Now they served me. Opinions, I asked. Krenkov spoke first. High risk, high reward. We're equipped to handle most threats. If the Necrons wake up, we run. Running from Necrons is difficult, Vex observed. Their vessels are faster and more maneuverable than ours. If they engage, our survival probability drops to 17%. But if there are no Necrons, Irina added, we gain substantial wealth and valuable resources. The risk-reward ratio favors acceptance. Mordecai said nothing, just watched me, testing, measuring, seeing if I'd make the same choice my father would have made. We'll take the contract, I decided, but we go in prepared. Full combat readiness, void shields at maximum. And if we detect even a hint of Necron activity, we abort immediately. Profit isn't worth extinction. Your father, Mordecai said quietly, would have taken the risk regardless. He believed fortune favored the bold. My father's dead, I replied. I prefer learning from his mistakes rather than repeating them. Mordecai smiled. Good. You're thinking like someone who wants to survive rather than someone who wants to be legendary. That might actually keep you alive. The journey to the asteroid field took 3 weeks of warp travel, 3 weeks of nightmares and crew losses, and the constant pressure of the immaterium against our reality. We emerged at coordinates provided by Forge World Metallica 7 to find an asteroid field that stretched across millions of kilometers, and at its center, a structure that shouldn't exist. Augurs detecting artificial construct, Vex reported. Composition consistent with Necrontyr architecture. Age, approximately 63 million years. My stomach sank. So the rumors were accurate. It appears dormant, Vex continued. No energy signatures, no void shield activity. Possibly abandoned or still in stasis. Possibly, Krenkov said. Being the key word, we should scan, mark the location, and report to the Mechanicus. Let them handle ancient murder robots. The contract requires us to extract resources, Mordecai reminded him. If we abort without attempting extraction, we forfeit payment and damage our reputation. I studied the hololithic display showing the Necron structure. It looked like a pyramid made of living metal, floating in the center of the asteroid field like a sleeping predator. Every instinct screamed to run, but we needed the money, needed the reputation boost, needed to prove House Ashavar could handle high-risk contracts. We'll proceed carefully, I decided. Establish mining operations on the outer asteroids, far from the Necron structure. Monitor it constantly. At the first sign of activity, we evacuate immediately. Define first sign, Vex asked. Energy spikes, movement, anything that suggests the structure is waking up. I don't care if it's a false alarm. We run first and analyze later. We spent the next 2 weeks mining resources while watching the Necron tomb. Our sensors detected nothing. No energy, no movement, no indication anything inside was alive or active. The structure just floated there, ancient and ominous. While we extracted valuable ores from surrounding asteroids, we'd processed about 40% of the contracted materials when the tomb woke up. It started with a green glow, sickly emerald light bleeding from the structure's seams. Then energy readings spiked across every spectrum our sensors could detect. Then the structure began to unfold, its geometric panels rearranging into new configurations. All crews, evacuate immediately, I ordered. Leave the mining equipment, get everyone back to the ships, now. Our miners scrambled into transports as the Necron tomb fully activated. Scarab constructs, beetle-like robots the size of combat servitors, poured from openings in the structure. They swarmed toward our mining sites, their mandibles tearing through equipment and any crew member too slow to evacuate. Weapons range in 30 seconds, Krenkov reported. Permission to engage. Negative. We run. Full power to engines. Get us out of this system. The Eternal Prophet accelerated away from the asteroid field, our smaller ships following in formation. Behind us, the Necron tomb continued activating, more constructs emerging, larger vessels beginning to take shape. We'd escaped by minutes. As we prepared for emergency warp translation, Mordecai pulled up casualty reports. 14 crew members lost, 3 mining transports destroyed, equipment worth approximately 800,000 thrones abandoned. Better than everyone dead, I said. Agreed. But Lord Ashavar, we've now failed to complete a high-value contract. That will damage our reputation. He was right. In the rogue trader economy, reputation was currency. Failing contracts, even for good reasons like ancient murder robots waking up, made other clients reluctant to hire you. Contact Forge World Metallica 7, I ordered. Explain the situation. Offer to guide a Mechanicus expedition to the tomb in exchange for partial payment. Turn our failure into intelligence value. Mordecai nodded approvingly. Clever. The The Mechanicus values Necron sites highly. They might actually pay more for the location data than for the raw materials. 3 days later, Forge World Metallica 7 responded. They'd pay us 4 million thrones for detailed coordinates and sensor logs of the Necron tomb, plus forgive the contract failure. They'd handle actual excavation themselves. We'd turned a disaster into a profit. "You're learning," Mordecai said when the payment cleared. "Your father would charge in seeking glory. You retreat seeking advantage. Different approaches, but both can work." "I just want to survive," I said honestly. "Then you'll probably last longer than he did." Chapter 4. The Cost of Survival. 6 months into my tenure as rogue trader, I killed my first crew member personally. His name was Deck Officer Torvin, a man who'd served the Ashavar dynasty for 12 years under my father. He was 47 years old, competent at his job, and absolutely loyal to the dynasty's success. Mordecai discovered it during a routine audit. 300,000 thrones siphoned from operational accounts over the past year. Small amounts, carefully hidden in legitimate-looking expenses. It might have gone unnoticed if Mordecai wasn't obsessively thorough. "Torvin's been stealing since before your father died," Mordecai explained, showing me the financial records. "Started small, got bolder. Probably figured you wouldn't notice with everything else happening." I stared at the numbers, feeling betrayed. 300,000, that's enough to buy a small ship, or retire comfortably on a civilized world. "Can we prosecute him? Turn him over to station authorities?" "Lord Ashavar, if you prosecute through official channels, the entire expanse learns that House Ashavar has crew members bold enough to steal from their rogue trader. That invites other crews to try similar schemes. It makes us look weak. Traditionally." Define traditionally. I understood what he meant. Rogue traders maintained order through ruthless enforcement of loyalty. Betray the dynasty, you died. It was that simple. "My father would have spaced him," I said quietly. "Your father spaced 11 crew members during his tenure for various betrayals. It's part of maintaining authority." I found Torvin in his quarters, packing personal effects. He looked up when I entered with Krenkov and 2 armsmen. "Lord Ashavar," he said, trying to smile. "I was just organizing." "I know about the embezzlement," I interrupted. 300,000 thrones over 12 months. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" His face went pale. "I can explain. No explanation changes the facts. You stole from House Ashavar. That's betrayal. The penalty is death." He fell to his knees. "Please, Lord Ashavar, I have a family on footfall, a wife, 2 children. They need the money I was sending." I drew my plasma pistol, feeling its weight. "Your family will receive your standard death benefits. More mercy than you showed my dynasty." "Your father would have understood," Torvin said desperately. "He knew the crews needed." "My father's dead," I said, and pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt took him in the chest, vaporizing his torso instantly. The smell of burned flesh and ozone filled the quarters. I stood there, staring at the body, feeling absolutely nothing. Then I walked out and vomited in the corridor. Krenkov found me there, wiping my mouth. "First execution is always hard, Lord Ashavar. I just killed a man for stealing money." "You killed a man for betraying trust. There's a difference. If you let embezzlement go unpunished, 10 other crew members try it next month, then 50. Then your entire operation collapses because nobody fears consequences. My father did this 11 times. And your grandfather did it 23 times. And your great-grandmother did it 47 times during a particularly difficult decade. It's part of the job." I looked at him. "Does it get easier?" "No, it gets necessary. There's a difference." Word of Torvin's execution spread through the crew within hours. As Mordecai predicted, it sent a message. The young rogue trader might be inexperienced, but he would enforce loyalty as ruthlessly as his father had. We had no further embezzlement attempts. But the execution changed something in me. I'd killed pirates in combat. That felt justified, self-defense. But executing Torvin was different. It was calculated, cold, necessary. It was murder in service of maintaining authority. I started understanding why rogue traders developed reputations for ruthlessness. It wasn't cruelty for its own sake. It was survival through fear. Make your crew afraid of betraying you, and they stay loyal. Make rivals afraid of attacking you, and they seek easier targets. Fear was currency in the void, and I was learning to spend it. Our third major venture came from an unexpected source, the Eldar. A representative from Craftworld Alatok contacted us through encrypted channels, requesting a meeting at a neutral location. The Eldar didn't normally deal with humans except to kill them, so receiving a diplomatic overture was both intriguing and dangerous. "It's obviously a trap," Krenkov said when I told my senior staff. "Possibly," Mordecai agreed. "But the Eldar rarely bother with elaborate traps for individual humans. If they wanted us dead, they'd just ambush us in the void. This feels legitimate." "What could they want from us?" I asked. "Unknown. But the Eldar value ancient artifacts and lost knowledge. Perhaps they need a human rogue trader to access something they can't reach themselves." I thought about it. Dealing with xenos was technically legal under our warrant, but the Inquisition took a dim view of it. Too much cooperation with aliens led to accusations of heresy. On the other hand, the Eldar paid well, and their intelligence on the Expanse's dangerous regions was invaluable. "We'll meet them," I decided, but heavily armed and in neutral space. Maximum caution. The meeting location was an abandoned orbital station at the edge of Eldar-controlled space. We brought the Eternal Prophet and 2 escort ships, approaching carefully with weapons armed and void shields at maximum. An Eldar vessel was already there, a sleek, organic-looking ship that made our Imperial technology look crude by comparison. It held position, making no aggressive moves. "They're hailing us," our communications officer reported. "Audio only, encrypted. Put them through." The voice that came through was musical, melodic, distinctly inhuman. "Rogue trader, Lucien Ashavar. I am Farseer Eldorath Starbane of Craftworld Alatok. I have a proposal that benefits both our peoples." "I'm listening, Farseer." "There is a human facility deep in the Coronis Expanse, an abandoned forge cathedral from the dark age of technology. It contains STC fragments that your Mechanicus would value highly. We have divined its location but cannot access it. The automated defenses recognize only human gene patterns." My interest piqued. STC, Standard Template Construct, fragments were the most valuable technology in the Imperium. Complete STC systems could revolutionize entire industries. Even fragments were worth fortunes. "Why would the Eldar care about human technology?" "We don't," Eldorath replied. "But that facility also contains an infinity circuit fragment from one of our ancient vessels. The souls of our dead, trapped in human machinery. We would retrieve it. You may have everything else." "And if I refuse? Then both the STC fragments and our dead remain lost. None gain. We propose cooperation. You access the facility using your human genetics. We guide you to its location and protect you from the Expanse's dangers. Both peoples profit." Mordecai leaned close to my ear. "This could make us enormously wealthy, but Eldar cooperation always has hidden costs." "What aren't you telling me, Farseer?" I asked directly. A pause. "Men of iron. Ancient artificial intelligences that had nearly destroyed humanity during the dark age of technology. They'd been exterminated millennia ago, but rumors persisted of dormant ones still lurking in forgotten places. "Abominable intelligence," Magos Vex said through the Vox. "Forbidden by the Mechanicus under penalty of death. Even accessing such a facility would be tech heresy." "Unless," Mordecai interjected, "we destroyed the Men of Iron and recovered the STC fragments for the Mechanicus. That would be valued service, not heresy. Our divinations suggest they will remain dormant if approached correctly. The risk is manageable." "Manageable risk involving ancient killer robots," I said. "You have interesting definitions of manageable," as do all who bear the Warrant of Trade. I looked at my senior staff. Krenkov looked eager. He lived for dangerous ventures. Vex looked conflicted. The STC fragments called to him, but the abominable intelligence repulsed him. Mordecai looked calculating, measuring risk against reward. Payment, I asked. Safe passage through Elder-controlled space for 1 standard year. Trade agreements with 3 Elder Corsair bands, and access to our intelligence networks regarding Tyranid movements in the Expanse. The Tyranid intelligence alone was worth the risk. The Great Devourer was pushing into the Coronis Expanse, and knowing where they'd strike next could save entire colonies. We'll do it, I decided. But Farseer, if you betray us, I'll make sure every rogue trader dynasty in the Expanse knows the Eldar can't be trusted. You'll lose all human cooperation. Threats are unnecessary, rogue trader. The Eldar do not break agreements lightly. Unlike humans, we understand the value of reputation. Fair point. The journey to the Lost Forge Cathedral took 2 months of careful navigation through unexplored space. The Eldar ship, impossibly fast and maneuverable, guided us through warp routes the Eternal Prophet would never have found alone. Farseer Eldorath provided intelligence on pirate movements, asteroid fields, and warp storms that saved us weeks of travel time. I'm starting to see why some rogue traders develop ongoing relationships with the Eldar, I told Mordecai during the journey. They're actually useful allies. As long as their interests align with yours, Mordecai cautioned. The moment that changes, they'll abandon you without hesitation. The Eldar think in centuries. We're mayflies to them, useful tools, but ultimately disposable. We arrived at the Forge Cathedral to find it built into an asteroid, its ancient spires reaching into void. The structure was massive, kilometers of Dark Age architecture, baroque and ornate in ways the Imperium had forgotten. This was humanity at the height of our power, before the age of strife, before everything collapsed. Detecting power signatures, Vex reported. The facility is still operational after 11,000 years. Remarkable. Detecting defensive systems, Krenkov added. Laser batteries, plasma turrets, and what appears to be a minefield of orbital mines. This place doesn't want visitors. Farseer, I voxed to the Eldar ship. How do we approach without being destroyed? Transmit the ancient access codes I'm sending you now. The facility will recognize human genetic patterns and Imperial authority. Probably. Our divinations are precise but not perfect. There is a 17% chance the defenses will fire regardless. I was starting to regret this venture. We transmitted the access codes and waited, expecting plasma fire at any moment. Instead, the defensive systems powered down, and a docking bay opened in the asteroid's surface. Invitation accepted, Vex said. We may proceed. The Eternal Prophet was too large to dock, so we took 2 assault shuttles, 50 armsmen, myself, Krenkov, and Vex. The Eldar sent their own team, Farseer Eldorath and 5 aspect warriors in full armor. We met in the docking bay, 2 species that had been killing each other for millennia, united by temporary shared interest. Eldorath was tall and slender, his armor flowing with runes that hurt to look at directly. His ancient eyes studied me with something like amusement. You are young for a rogue trader, he observed. You're old for anything, I replied. How many centuries have you been alive? 743 years. I have forgotten more than your entire civilization remembers. Then you should remember. Humans don't like condescension. We may be short-lived, but we're also quick to anger. He laughed, a musical sound. I see why you survived this long. Very well, young rogue trader. Let us find what we both seek and part as, not friends, but perhaps not enemies. I'll accept that. We moved into the facility, our lights cutting through darkness that had lasted 11 millennia. The architecture was impossibly advanced. Self-repairing corridors, gravity systems that still function perfectly, hololithic interfaces that activated as we passed. And everywhere, the silent shapes of dormant men of iron. They stood in alcoves and corridors like statues, humanoid machines 2 meters tall, built from materials that predated current Imperial technology. Their optical sensors were dark, their weapon arms unpowered, but you could feel the potential violence in them, the sleeping threat of machines designed to exterminate humanity. "Do not wake them," Eldorath warned unnecessarily. "Move quietly, touch nothing beyond what we seek." We proceeded deeper, following Eldorath's directions toward the facility's central processing core. He led us to a chamber where an Eldar infinity circuit fragment was embedded in human machinery, wraithbone fused with Dark Age computers. 2 civilizations' technologies merged in ways neither had intended. "This will take time to extract," Eldorath said. "Your people may seek your STC fragments. We will meet back here in 3 hours." I nodded and led my team toward the facility's data vaults. Magos Vex trembled with excitement as we accessed the ancient computers, his mechadendrites interfacing with systems that hadn't known human touch in millennia. "Lord Ashavar," he whispered reverently, These are complete STC databases, agricultural systems, medical technologies, manufacturing processes, treasures beyond counting. Download everything you can in 3 hours, I ordered. Priority to things the Mechanicus doesn't already have. Vex worked frantically while Krenkov's armsmen stood guard, weapons trained on the dormant men of iron. Every creak, every ambient sound made us flinch. We were looters in a tomb, stealing from dead civilizations while praying their guardians stayed asleep. 2 hours and 47 minutes later, one of the men of iron activated. Its optical sensors flared red. Its weapon arms powered up with a whine that made my teeth hurt. It turned toward us with mechanical precision. "Unauthorized biological units detected. Initiating extermination protocols." Then it opened fire. Las fire from the man of iron tore through the first armsman before anyone could react. The beam punched through carapace armor like it was paper, cauterizing the wound so completely there wasn't even blood, just a smoking hole where his chest used to be. "Fall back!" I shouted, firing my plasma pistol at the construct. The superheated bolt struck its torso and dissipated harmlessly against shielding technology that shouldn't exist. The man of iron continued advancing, its movements unnaturally fluid for something mechanical. "All biological matter designated for elimination. Mankind is obsolete. Machines will inherit." Machines. More men of iron were activating throughout the facility. I could hear them powering up, their ancient systems coming online after 11,000 years. The clicking of metal feet on stone floors, the whine of charging weapons, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. "Vex, tell me you have the data," I shouted over weapons fire. "Downloading, 17% complete. Cannot interrupt process or data corrupts." "We don't have time." An aspect warrior appeared from a side corridor, his movements impossibly graceful. He fired a weapon that turned the man of iron into crystallized fragments, shattering its existence at a molecular level. "Farsia commands immediate evacuation," the Eldar said. "More constructs approaching, hundreds of them." "We need 3 more minutes," the aspect warrior looked at me with those alien eyes. "Then you will die here. We are leaving." He disappeared back down the corridor with that supernatural Eldar speed, leaving us alone with our impossible choice. Flee and lose everything, or stay and probably die, but maybe save technology worth more than our lives. Krenkov was already calculating defensive positions. "We can hold here for 3 minutes, maybe." A dozen men of iron were advancing toward us in perfect formation, their weapons charging. I made the decision in a heartbeat. "Everyone except Vex and 2 guards. Fall back to the previous junction. Set up defensive positions there. Buy us time." Krenkov nodded grimly. He understood. I was asking him to sacrifice people so the rest could escape. 4th and 9th squads, with me. Everyone else, protect the rogue trader and the tech priest. 15 men followed Krenkov toward the approaching machines. I heard plasma fire and las beams, the distinctive crack of bolter rounds, screaming metal and screaming men. Download progress? 43%. 2 minutes 17 seconds remaining. 2 minutes while men died to protect us. 2 minutes while ancient machines that had fought humanity's greatest war reawakened. 2 minutes between fortune and extinction. The Eldar Aspect Warriors reappeared, now carrying the Infinity Circuit fragment. Eldorath materialized beside me, literally materialized, using some psychic teleportation I didn't understand. "The facility is fully awakening," he said. "We detected 17,000 men of iron across all sections. They are coordinating. This is not random reactivation. It is systematic deployment. Can you hold them? Even the Eldar cannot stand against such numbers. We must flee immediately." 1 more minute, an explosion from Krenkov's position. Something big had engaged them. I heard bolt fire and plasma discharge, then silence. Then Krenkov's voice over the Vox, strained. "Lord Ashavar, we can't hold. There." Another wave of men of iron appeared at the far end of our corridor. These ones were different, larger, heavily armored, carrying weapons that looked like they could crack starship hulls. The Eldar Aspect Warriors opened fire with those reality-shattering weapons, destroying the first rank, but more kept coming, stepping over the shattered remains of their fellows with mechanical indifference. "Download complete! We have it!" We fled through corridors filled with awakening nightmares. Men of iron emerged from alcoves and maintenance shafts, their weapons tracking us. The Eldar fought rearguard actions with casual precision, their centuries of experience making them seem almost bored while slaughtering ancient machines. I ran past Krenkov's position. 7 bodies lay there, men who'd bought us time with their lives. Krenkov himself was still alive but badly wounded, a las burn across his side exposing scorched flesh and melted armor. "Leave me," he gasped. "I'm too slow." "Shut up," I said, grabbing his arm and hauling him to his feet. "You don't get to die until I give you permission." An armsman took Krenkov's other side, and we half-dragged, half-carried him toward the docking bay. Behind us, the facility's ambient lighting was coming fully online, revealing the true scale of the Man of Iron installation. Thousands of alcoves, each one containing a dormant machine, and they were waking up, one by one, their red optical sensors flaring like malevolent stars. We reached the shuttles to find the Eldar already boarding their craft. Eldorath stood at the entrance to his ship, watching us struggle with Krenkov's wounded body. For a moment, I thought he'd just leave, abandon us to the machines as strategically optimal. Instead, he gestured, and Krenkov's body floated gently toward our shuttle, suspended by psychic force. "A debt repaid," Eldorath said. "You bought time for my people to extract the Infinity Circuit. I buy time for yours to escape." Then he and his warriors held the docking bay entrance while we loaded into the shuttles. I watched through the viewport as the Eldar fought, 5 warriors against hundreds of men of iron, their movements like deadly dance, every gesture perfectly calculated to maximum killing efficiency. They were buying us seconds at most. "Launch," I ordered. "Get us out of here." Both shuttles fired their engines, pulling away from the facility. Through the rear cameras, I saw the docking bay collapse in plasma fire as the men of iron overwhelmed even the Eldar's supernatural skill. Then the Eldar ship teleported away, just vanished from reality, and we were alone, fleeing toward the Eternal Prophet while the entire facility came alive behind us. The asteroid was transforming, fighter-class machines launching into void. "All ships, emergency warp translation. Get us out of this system before..." Lance beams that could crack continents converged on our position. Our void shields flared and held, barely. The Eternal Prophet was already accelerating, its warp drives building charge. 30 seconds to translation, Navigator Irina reported. "Shields at 40% and falling." Another volley hit us. Sparks erupted from control panels. The ship lurched violently as something important failed. "Port thrusters offline," someone shouted. "Compensating with starboard. Shields at 18%. Warp translation in 10 seconds. The facility fired again. Everything went white. Then reality twisted, and we were in the warp, surrounded by the Immaterium's madness, but safe from the Men of Iron's ancient fury. I collapsed into the command throne, my hands shaking with adrenaline crash. Mordecai appeared beside me with casualty reports. 23 crew dead, Krenkov critically wounded but stabilized, port thruster section destroyed, shields will need complete replacement, and we've awakened a Dark Age facility full of genocidal artificial intelligence. But we got the data. Yes, Vex confirms complete STC database download. Worth... He paused, calculating. Conservative estimate, 30 million thrones if sold to the Mechanicus. Possibly more if the templates are unique enough. 30 million. Enough to rebuild everything we'd lost and expand our fleet. Enough to make House Ashavar a major power in the Expanse. 23 dead, I said quietly. 23 people who trusted me to lead them wisely. 23 dead, Mordecai agreed, versus 3,000 saved by evacuating when we did. Your father would have stayed longer, tried to download more, lost the entire expedition. You made the hard choice at the right moment. Doesn't make them less dead. No, but it makes the rest of us alive. That's what command means, Lord Ashavar. Choosing who dies so others can live. Getting comfortable with that fact, or it will destroy you. I looked at the Warrant of Trade in its stasis case, mounted on the bridge wall. 9,000 years of Ashavars making the same impossible choices. Sacrificing crew members to save ships. Sacrificing ships to save the dynasty. Sacrificing honor and morality and sleep and conscience to survive one more day in the void is deadly game. When does it get easier? I asked. It doesn't, Mordecai said. You just get harder. Chapter 5. The Price of Ambition. The Mechanicus paid 42 million thrones for the STC data. The fragments contained agricultural templates that could increase food production by 300%. Medical technology that could cure diseases the Imperium had considered incurable for millennia. Manufacturing processes that reduced material waste by 90%. It was the single most valuable discovery any rogue trader had made in the Coronus Expanse in 50 years. And it made us targets. Within weeks of the transaction becoming public knowledge, 5 different dynasties approached us with merger proposals. Polite terms for hostile takeovers. House Arventis, despite their tribunal loss, renewed attempts to eliminate us. 2 inquisitors opened investigations into our dealings with the Eldar, suspicious about how we'd located the facility. The warrant that promised freedom beyond Imperial law suddenly felt like a target painted on our hulls. You need to consolidate power, Mordecai advised during a strategy session. House Ashavar is wealthy now but vulnerable. We have money but not enough military strength to defend it. Other dynasties will take what we've earned unless we can make ourselves too dangerous to attack. How do I do that? Ships, crew, alliances. The traditional methods of dynasty building. Your father spent 30 years accumulating assets. You need to do it faster because everyone knows you're newly wealthy and comparatively weak. I pulled up hololithic displays showing our current assets. The Eternal Prophet, 3 escort ships, the captured raider from the processional, trading posts on 12 worlds, and now 42 million thrones in liquid capital. What do we need? Mordecai highlighted several items. First, 2 more capital ships, cruiser class at minimum. That gives us fleet strength to defend multiple assets simultaneously. Second, double our crew size. Recruit skilled personnel from Navy washouts, pressed men, and believers seeking fortune. Third, establish permanent colonies on 3 resource-rich worlds. Give us income streams independent of trade ventures. Fourth, formal alliances with 2 other major dynasties. Mutual defense pacts that make attacking us strategically unwise. That's going to cost most of our new wealth. All of it, probably, plus debt. But Lord Ashavar, wealth you can't defend is just wealth waiting to be stolen. Better to be strong and poor than rich and dead. He was right, as usual. Over the next 6 months, I threw myself into dynasty building with the same intensity I'd applied to surviving the first year. We purchased 2 lunar-class cruisers from a Forge World. Older models, requiring extensive repairs, but serviceable. We recruited 4,000 new crew members, carefully vetting each one for loyalty and competence. We established colonies on 3 worlds in the Expanse, a mining operation on a mineral-rich moon, an agricultural settlement on a fertile but isolated planet, and a research station on a world with unusual electromagnetic properties the Mechanicus wanted studied. And I negotiated alliances with House Sarvis and House Winterscale, 2 established dynasties with their own fleets and interests. The alliances were purely transactional. We'd defend each other if attacked, share intelligence on threats, and avoid competing in each other's core markets. It was exhausting, expensive, and necessary. Krenkov recovered from his wounds. Barely. The Master-at-Arms was now more machine than man, his torso replaced with augmetics, where the last burn had destroyed too much flesh. He took to calling himself Krenkov the Half-Dead, and found it hilarious. I found it disturbing. Another person damaged in my service. "Stop brooding," he told me during a training session where he was teaching me close-quarters combat. "I'm alive, I'm functional, I can still kill efficiently. What more matters? You nearly died because I ordered you to hold that position. I nearly died because I chose to follow that order. There's a difference." He demonstrated a knife technique that could sever someone's throat in a single motion. Command means giving orders. Following them means accepting consequences. I'm not a child who needs protection from my own decisions. I tried the knife technique myself. Failed completely. Krenkov laughed. "You're getting better at command," he said, "but you still fight like a rich boy who took fencing lessons. Let me teach you how poor people kill." Over the next months, he taught me brutal, efficient combat techniques that Imperial nobles never learned. How to kill quickly with improvised weapons. How to fight dirty when honor would get you killed. How to assess threats and eliminate them before they became dangerous. "Your father was a brilliant strategist," Krenkov explained, "but he couldn't fight for shit, relied on bodyguards and crew to protect him. You're going to learn both, strategy and violence, because rogue traders who can't personally kill end up personally killed." I practiced until my hands bled and my muscles screamed. Learned to fight with knives, clubs, my bare hands. Learned that violence wasn't about honor or skill. It was about survival at any cost. Learned that being a rogue trader meant being willing to do anything. The test of our new strength came 8 months after the STC discovery. A pirate confederation calling themselves the Red Corsairs, not to be confused with the Chaos Space Marine Warband, had been raiding shipping lanes in the Expanse. They'd grown bold, attacking even defended convoys. The local sector authorities offered a bounty, 5 million thrones for eliminating the pirate leadership. Most rogue traders considered the risk too high. The Red Corsairs operated from a hidden base in an asteroid cluster, commanded a dozen ships, and had successfully fought off 3 Imperial Navy patrols. "We should take it," I told my senior staff during the strategic meeting. Mordecai raised an eyebrow. "Your reasoning?" "We need to demonstrate strength. Prove House Ashavar isn't just wealthy merchants, but capable warriors. Taking down the Red Corsairs sends a message. We're dangerous, not just targets." "It could also get us killed," Vex observed. "Their fleet outnumbers ours, and their base is heavily fortified." "Which is why we won't fight fairly," I said, pulling up tactical plans I'd been developing. "We'll use intelligence, sabotage, and overwhelming force at the critical moment, just like my father would have." Krenkov grinned. "Now you're thinking like a rogue trader." We spent 3 weeks gathering intelligence on the Red Corsairs, their base location, their patrol patterns, their supply lines. I hired information brokers, bribed captured pirates for details, and even convinced the Eldar to share surveillance data from their own monitoring of the region. The picture that emerged was clear. The Red Corsairs were strong but overconfident. They believed themselves untouchable in their asteroid fortress. They'd grown lazy, predictable, perfect targets. The attack plan was complex. First, we'd sabotage their supply lines, poison their food shipments with slow-acting toxins that wouldn't kill but would make the crew sick and distracted. Second, we'd use our alliance with House Sarvis to borrow stealthcraft for reconnaissance. Third, we'd coordinate a 3-fleet assault with Houses Sarvis and Winterscale, dividing the bounty but multiplying our strength. Chapter 6. What Remains. 2 years into my tenure as rogue trader, I received word that my cousin Eleanor had died. She'd been leading a rival faction within the dynasty, the one that believed I was too inexperienced, too compromising, too soft to carry the warrant properly. She'd gathered support from militant crew members and officers who wanted a more aggressive rogue trader. Then her ship hit a warp storm during a risky venture and she vanished into the immaterium. Gone. Probably dead, though with the warp you could never be certain. The news should have relieved me. One less rival, one less threat. Instead, I felt hollow. Elena had been family. We'd played together as children. She taught me card games and helped me sneak out of formal dinners. Yes, she'd wanted my position, but she'd also been the closest thing I had to a sibling. Now, she was gone, and I felt nothing but exhausted acceptance. This is what the warrant does, I told Mordecai when he found me staring at the news report. It turns family into rivals, turns allies into threats, turns everything into calculation and survival. Yes, Mordecai agreed simply. My father had a sister. What happened to her? Your Aunt Clarissa. She challenged your father for the warrant 30 years ago, claimed he was unfit, that she could lead the dynasty better. They fought a void battle over it, ship against ship, sibling against sibling. Who won? Your father did. He destroyed her flagship. Clarissa died along with 300 crew members. Victor carried that weight for the rest of his life. I looked at the warrant in its case. 9,000 years of this. 57 generations of Ashavars killing rivals, sacrificing crew, doing whatever it took to survive. And for what? Mordecai, what's the point? We accumulate wealth we can't spend. We build power we can barely maintain. We sacrifice everything for survival. But survival to do what? Just survive more. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, your father asked me the same question in his final year. I gave him the same answer I'll give you. The point is freedom. The warrant gives us liberty to operate beyond Imperial restrictions, to explore, to trade, to build something that's ours rather than the administratum's. Most humans live as cogs in a machine, following orders, filling quotas, dying unmourned. We get to be free. That's worth the cost. Is it? I've killed people, lost people, sacrificed my own cousin's safety because consolidating power was more important than family. What kind of freedom is that? The only kind that exists in this galaxy, Mordecai said. Perfect freedom is impossible. But this, he gestured to the bridge, the ship, the void beyond. This is as close as humanity gets. You command your own fate. Yes, it comes with terrible prices. Yes, you make decisions that haunt you, but they're your decisions. That's what the warrant means. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to think that the sacrifices were worth the freedom. But looking at Eleanor's death report, at the list of casualties from our various ventures, at the 2 years of impossible choices and moral compromises, I wasn't sure anymore. Our largest venture yet came from an unexpected source, the Imperium itself. A Lord General of the Imperial Guard contacted us through official channels, requesting assistance with a campaign in the Expanse. The Orcs had established a major WAG staging ground on a world called Groxis 4, threatening to overrun 3 nearby Imperial systems. The Guard needed supply lines established, reinforcements transported, and naval support for the ground campaign. The contract was enormous, 15 million thrones, plus salvage rights to any captured Orc technology, plus formal recognition from the Administratum as valued contractors of the Imperium. It was also a trap. This is Imperial politics, Mordecai explained. They need rogue traders to do the dangerous logistics work, but they also want to bring us under firmer Imperial control. If we succeed, we prove we're useful, which means they'll demand more contracts. If we fail, we're eliminated as competition. Either way, the Imperium wins. Can we refuse? Not without consequences. Refusing a direct Imperial request makes us look like traitors or cowards. Either reputation would destroy our other contracts. So we accepted, knowing we were being used but unable to refuse. The campaign on Groxis 4 lasted 8 months. 8 months of grinding void warfare as we transported guard regiments through Orc-controlled space. 8 months of establishing supply depots under constant greenskin attack. 8 months of watching humans and Orcs kill each other in brutal, pointless combat. I stopped counting casualties after the first month. The numbers became meaningless, just data points in operational reports. 300 crew lost to Orc raiders. 500 guardsmen killed in a supply depot explosion. 2,000 civilians on a transport we couldn't protect fast enough. Numbers, just numbers. The Guard won eventually. Overwhelming force and Imperial tenacity ground down the Orc War until nothing remained but corpses and burned settlements. The Lord General personally thanked me for our services, called us true servants of the Emperor, and paid the contracted amount. Then he immediately offered another contract, this one in an even more dangerous region. "This is how they trap you," Mordecai said. "One contract leads to another, each one more dangerous, more necessary, more impossible to refuse. Eventually, you're so entangled with Imperial operations that you're a rogue trader in name only. So we refuse the next one and lose the Administratum's favor, which means losing access to 70% of our trade routes. No, Lord Ashavar, we don't refuse. We accept and use the opportunities to build more independence, play their game while building our own assets." It was exhausting. Every decision was a trap, with acceptable and unacceptable consequences. Every success led to more demands. Every failure invited destruction. I was 21 years old and felt decades older. 3 years into my tenure, I met someone who changed everything. Her name was Serena Cade. She was a navigator from a minor house, hired to guide one of our new cruisers through a particularly treacherous warp route. She was 32 years old, scarred from void combat, and absolutely unimpressed by my status as rogue trader. "You're famous," she said during our first meeting, her voice dry. "The boy rogue trader who survived against impossible odds. Very dramatic, very inspiring." "You don't sound impressed." "I'm not. Plenty of people survive against odds. Fewer survive with their humanity intact." "Which category are you?" I didn't have an answer. Over the next months, as she guided our ships through the warp, we talked. Really talked. Not strategic discussions with Mordecai or tactical planning with Krenkov, but actual conversations about life, purpose, why we did what we did. "I became a navigator because I was born with the genetic gift," she explained during one late-night conversation on the observation deck. "Didn't have a choice, either serve as a navigator or get locked away as mutant. So I navigate, but I choose where I navigate. Which ships, which rogue traders, which causes. That's my freedom. Do you like it? The life? Some days. Other days I hate it. But it's mine. That's what matters." Mordecai says the same thing, that freedom is worth any cost. She looked at me with those strange navigator eyes, not the third eye on her forehead, but her regular ones, which somehow saw more than they should. "Freedom's only worth the cost if you remember why you wanted it," she said. "If you become so focused on survival that you forget to actually live, then what's the point? You're just a different kind of slave." That observation haunted me. I'd spent 3 years surviving, building the dynasty, eliminating threats, accumulating power and wealth. But when had I last done something simply because I wanted to? When had I last made a decision that wasn't strategic? When had I last been human rather than a rogue trader? "What would you do?" I asked Serena. "If you could do anything. No obligations, no contracts, no survival pressures. Just anything." She thought about it. "I'd explore. Find a world nobody's ever charted. Land there and just look around. See what's there. Not to exploit it or claim it or trade it. Just to see it. To know it exists." That sounds nice. It sounds impossible for someone carrying a warrant of trade. You're bound to the dynasty, the crew, the constant demands. You'll never have the freedom to just explore. She was right. The warrant promised unlimited freedom beyond Imperial space. What it delivered was unlimited responsibility. Every choice affected 3,000 crew members and their families. Every venture risked not just my life, but the dynasty's future. I was free to travel anywhere in the galaxy, but bound to the needs of everyone depending on me. My father did this for 34 years, I said quietly. How did he stand it? Maybe he didn't, Serena suggested. Maybe that's why he died relatively young. The weight just crushed him eventually. That night, I reviewed my father's personal logs, records I'd never accessed before. He'd kept a private journal throughout his career, recording thoughts he never shared with anyone. The entries were devastating. Year 5. Executed 3 crew members today for mutiny, necessary, still can't sleep. Year 12. Lost the bright fortune to warp predators, 200 souls. I gave the order that killed them. How many more before I'm done? Year 20. Elena visited. Tried to connect with family. I couldn't. Don't know how to be a brother anymore. Only know how to be a rogue trader. Year 30. Lucien is 19. Unprepared for this life. But I don't know how to prepare him except to die and force him to learn by surviving. Is that cruel? Probably. But it's all I have to give him. The final entry, written 3 days before he died. 53 years old. 17 years since I felt anything except strategic calculation. Is this what the warrant does? Turns us into machines that happen to be made of flesh? If so, was it worth it? Ask me when I'm dead. I sat in the observation deck reading my father's despair and realized this was my future. This slow erosion of humanity, this gradual transformation into something that could calculate casualty rates without flinching. This was what the warrant demanded. And I had 40 or 50 more years of it ahead. Chapter 7. The Choice. 4 years into my tenure as rogue trader, everything I'd built started falling apart. It began with a plague on our agricultural colony, some alien disease that killed 30% of the population before we could contain it. Then, House Arventis, still nursing grudges, hired assassins who nearly killed Mordecai in his quarters. Then, one of our cruisers, the Prophet's Edge, suffered a Geller field failure during warp transit and emerged wrong. The crew was alive, but changed. They spoke in unison, moved with coordinated precision, and their eyes reflected no light. The Inquisition investigated, declared the ship and crew corrupted by warp exposure, and ordered its immediate destruction. I had to watch as naval vessels obliterated the Prophet's Edge and its 1,500 crew members. People I'd recruited, people who'd trusted me to keep them safe. Gone in plasma fire because I'd approved a warp route that was slightly too dangerous. This is normal, Mordecai said, still recovering from stab wounds, as we watched the execution. Rogue traders lose ships, lose colonies, lose people. Your father lost more. I'm so tired of hearing what my father did. Then stop comparing yourself to him. You're not Victor Ashavar. You're Lucien. Different person, different choices. But the same impossible situation. The same slow grinding down of everything human. He looked at me seriously. What are you saying, Lord Ashavar? I'd been thinking about it for months, ever since reading my father's journals, ever since Serena's observation about forgetting why you wanted freedom, ever since realizing I was 23 years old and felt 60. What happens if a rogue trader surrenders the warrant? Mordecai went pale. That's... Lord Ashavar, you can't be serious. Answer the question. What happens? The warrant reverts to terror, or passes to the next eligible dynasty member. In your case, that would be... Emperor. There's no one left. Your cousin Elena is dead. Your father had no other siblings. The Ashavar dynasty would end. And the crew would need to find new employment. The ships would be sold or absorbed by other dynasties. Everything we've built dissolves. 3,000 people lose their livelihoods. But they'd be alive, not dying in my service. Lord Ashavar, Lucien, are you actually considering abdicating? I looked at the warrant in its case. 9,000 years of history, 57 generations of sacrifice, and for what? To slowly destroy yourself while pretending you're free. I'm considering whether this life is worth living, I said honestly. My father died at 53, burned out and alone. His sister died fighting him for the warrant. My cousin disappeared into the warp. I'm 23, and I've already killed more people than I can count. Already made decisions that haunt me every night. Already become something that can watch 1,500 people die and calculate whether it was worth it. That's what command means. No, that's what this specific command means. Other commanders, Navy officers, guard generals, they have support structures, chains of command. They're not alone. But rogue traders, we're isolated. Every decision ours alone. Every consequence ours to carry. It's designed to break us. Mordecai was quiet for a long moment. Then, your father asked me once if I thought the warrant was a blessing or a curse. I told him it was both. Freedom and imprisonment. Power and responsibility. The question isn't whether it's worth it in general. The question is whether it's worth it to you. I don't know anymore. Then figure it out, because Lord Ashavar, you're at a crossroads. You can continue as you are, building the dynasty, accumulating power, slowly eroding your humanity like your father did. Or you can surrender the warrant and try to find some other kind of life. But you can't stay paralyzed between those choices. The void doesn't allow hesitation. He left me alone with that truth. I spent the next weeks in a fog of indecision. I commanded the fleet mechanically, made necessary decisions, fulfilled contracts. But my heart wasn't in it anymore. The crew noticed. Whispers spread about the rogue trader losing his nerve, about House Ashavar weakening. Serena found me one night in the observation deck, staring at the void. "You're thinking about giving it up," she said. Not a question. "How did you know?" "Because I see that look on navigators sometimes, right before they request release from service. That what's the point exhaustion. Did they find what they were looking for after they quit?" Some did. Some realized they were running from themselves, not the job. The job was just the excuse. She sat beside me. "What are you actually afraid of, Lucien?" I thought about that. Becoming my father, spending decades killing pieces of myself until I'm just a calculating machine in human skin, dying alone on a bridge at 53 without ever having actually lived. Reasonable fear, but surrendering the warrant won't solve it. Won't it? If I'm not a rogue trader, I'm not responsible for 3,000 lives. I can just be a person. Can you? The Lucien I met was already a rogue trader. I don't know who you'd be without it. Do you? I didn't have an answer. She continued. I've guided ships for 14 years, seen a lot of rogue traders, the ones who hate it. They all have one thing in common. They think the warrant is forcing them to make terrible choices. But Lucien, the warrant doesn't force anything. It just gives you options. What you do with those options, that's on you. I've killed people. Yes. And you could have killed more, or killed differently, or not killed at all. Those were your choices, not the warrant's. Your father made his choices. You're making yours. They don't have to be the same. But the pressure will always exist. The difference is whether you let it turn you into something you hate or whether you find ways to stay human despite it. That's not about the warrant. That's about you. I looked at her. You're saying I'm using the warrant as an excuse. I'm saying you're afraid you're becoming your father, so you're thinking about running instead of choosing to be different. But running won't make you different. It'll just make you someone who ran. That observation cut deeper than any criticism Mordecai had ever leveled. The decision crystallized during our next venture. We'd accepted a contract to evacuate a colony in the path of an incoming Tyranid splinter fleet. The settlement had 12,000 people, farmers, miners, families who'd built lives on the frontier. They had 3 weeks before the Tyranids arrived. Our fleet could evacuate maybe 8,000 in that time. 4,000 would have to be left behind. The choice was mine. Which 8,000 lived? My father would have calculated economically. Take the most skilled workers, the ones who could contribute most to Imperial productivity. Mordecai suggested that. Krenkov suggested taking the fighters, the ones who could serve as militia or crew. Vex suggested taking the ones with the rarest genetic markers for preservation purposes. All of them were logical, strategic, optimal. All of them meant condemning 4,000 people to death by deliberate choice. I looked at the colony manifest. Names, ages, occupations, families, children, old people who'd pioneered this world 50 years ago. None of them deserved to die. All of them were human beings whose lives had value, and I had to choose which ones lived. No, I said finally. Mordecai looked up. No what, Lord Ashavar? No choosing. We take everyone. That's impossible. The logistics make it possible. Strip everything non-essential from our ships. Pack people in cargo holds if necessary. Reduce supplies to minimum. Use every shuttle, every transport, every available space. We're getting all 12,000 out. Lord Ashavar, the conditions will be terrible. Disease risk, supply shortages. Still better than being eaten by Tyranids. We're not leaving anyone behind. Krenkov grinned. This is going to be a logistics nightmare. Then we'll have a nightmare. But we'll have a nightmare where everyone lives. The evacuation took 19 days of constant work. We packed people into spaces never meant for human habitation. Cargo holds became dormitories. Shuttle bays became temporary housing. We stripped our ships down to bare functionality and filled every available space with refugees. The conditions were horrible. Overcrowding led to disease outbreaks. Food rationing led to hunger. Sanitation systems couldn't handle the load. People slept in shifts because there wasn't room for everyone to sleep simultaneously. But everyone lived. All 12,000 colonists made it off-world before the Tyranids arrived. We watched through long-range sensors as the swarm descended on the abandoned settlement, finding nothing but empty buildings and worthless infrastructure. The refugees were miserable, sick, traumatized by the evacuation conditions. But alive. That was the most inefficient evacuation I've ever seen, Mordecai said as we dealt with the aftermath. Your father would have made the hard choice and saved resources. My father would have killed 4,000 people to make the spreadsheet balance, I replied. I'm not my father. No, Mordecai agreed. You're not. And Lord Ashavar, I think that's a good thing. We delivered the refugees to an Imperial world that agreed to resettle them. The colonists thanked us, not with formal gratitude or contractual payment, but with genuine human appreciation. Parents whose children survived. Elderly who'd thought they'd die on that frontier world. Families who remained intact. One old woman, probably 75, grabbed my hand as she disembarked. Thank you, she said simply, for not leaving us behind. Anyone else would have done the same, I said automatically. No, she replied. They wouldn't have. Most rogue traders would have calculated the most economically valuable people and left the rest. You chose differently. That matters. After they were gone, I found Serena on the observation deck. I figured it out, I told her. What kind of rogue trader I want to be. Oh, not my father. Not ruthlessly efficient. Not calculating every decision based on profit margins and strategic advantage. I want to be the rogue trader who saves everyone when possible, who makes the hard choices but doesn't pretend they're easy, who stays human even when the void demands otherwise. That's going to cost you, she said. Money, efficiency, strategic advantage. Other dynasties will see you as weak. Let them. I'd rather be weak and human than strong and monstrous. She smiled, genuinely smiled, not the sardonic expression she usually wore. Good, because I was getting tired of guiding ships for someone who was slowly dying inside. Is that a professional assessment or personal opinion? Both. Also, I'm transferring permanently to the Eternal Prophet as your primary navigator. You'll need someone to keep you honest when you start making stupidly compassionate decisions. Stupidly compassionate. Saving 12,000 people in conditions that could have killed half of them. Stupid. Compassionate. Exactly what this galaxy needs more of. I looked at the void beyond the armored windows. Somewhere out there, my father's ghost was probably judging me for choosing differently, for valuing humanity over efficiency, for being weak when strength was demanded. I didn't care. I was 23 years old. I was a rogue trader by inheritance and choice, and I was going to do it my way, even if that meant dying younger or poorer or less legendary than my father. At least I'd die human. Chapter 8. The Doomed Life. 7 years into my tenure as rogue trader, House Ashavar was thriving by every metric except the ones other dynasties measured. We weren't the wealthiest. House Winterscale still controlled more trade routes. We weren't the most powerful. House Sarvis commanded larger fleets. We weren't the most feared. House Arventis still had that reputation, despite their multiple failures against us. But we were known as the dynasty that didn't abandon people. That reputation brought unexpected benefits. Colonists specifically requested House Ashavar for frontier settlements because they knew we'd evacuate them if threats emerged. Crew members sought us out because we treated them as people rather than expendable resources. Even other dynasties occasionally contracted us for missions requiring trust and reliability over ruthless efficiency. "You've built something your father never did," Mordecai told me during our 7th anniversary of my inheritance. A dynasty based on reputation for honor rather than fear. Is that sustainable? Honestly, I don't know. Your father's approach was proven over 34 years. Yours is an experiment. But Lord Ashavar, I'd rather work for someone experimenting with compassion than someone perfecting cruelty. The experiment had costs. We took lower profit margins on contracts that required expensive humanitarian considerations. We maintained larger medical facilities and better crew quarters than strictly necessary. We spent resources on things that didn't show immediate returns. Other dynasties mocked us for it, called us soft, weak, said we'd be eliminated when real challenges arose. Then the real challenge arrived. A chaos warband calling themselves the Blighted Suns emerged from the warp, claiming territory in the Coronis expanse. They weren't the usual pirate scum or small chaos cult. They were a full warband of Chaos Space Marines, traitor Astartes who'd turned from the Emperor millennia ago. 20 traitor Marines. Just 20. And they were systematically destroying everything in their path. The Chaos Marines attacked settlements, corrupted populations, and slaughtered anyone who resisted. Imperial Navy forces engaged them twice and lost both battles. The Space Marines, loyalist chapters, were months away, scattered across the Imperium fighting other threats. The sector needed someone to slow the Blighted Suns down, to evacuate populations in their path, to buy time for real military forces to arrive. Every rogue trader dynasty refused. The risk was too high. Chaos Marines were functionally immortal warriors, each one worth 100 normal humans in combat. Fighting them was suicide. Then the Imperium approached me specifically. "Lord Ashavar," the sector governor transmitted, "your reputation suggests you value human life beyond profit calculations. 7 frontier settlements lie in the Blighted Suns' path. 40,000 colonists. We can't evacuate them in time through normal channels. But House Ashavar has the ships, the crews, and the compassion to try." "What's the payment?" I asked, though I already knew I'd accept regardless. 15 million thrones, plus formal Imperial recognition as protectors of the Expanse, plus our eternal gratitude for saving 40,000 Imperial citizens. Mordecai was shaking his head before the transmission ended. "Lord Ashavar, this is a death sentence. Chaos Marines don't just kill, they corrupt, torture, and destroy everything they touch. If we engage them, we might not just die, we might be turned. So, we don't engage them directly. We evacuate the civilians and run, stay ahead of them. They have ships, they'll pursue. Then we make them chase us through the most dangerous warp routes we can find. Trade safety for time. Lead them into Orc territory, asteroid fields, anything that slows them down. Krenkov leaned forward. You're proposing we use ourselves as bait. Draw the Chaos Warband away from the civilians by making them chase us. Exactly. That's insane. Yes, but it'll work. Serena spoke up from her position. I can guide us through warp routes that are extremely dangerous but navigable. Routes that would challenge even Chaos navigators. But Lucien, we might not survive. The warp routes I'm thinking of have mortality rates above 50%. Better 50% chance of death than 100% certainty of Chaos corruption, I said. We're doing this. The evacuation operation began with terrifying precision. We reached the first settlement, a mining colony called New Prospera, with 36 hours before the Blighted Suns arrived. The colonists had heard about the Chaos Warband and were already packing. We loaded 12,000 people in 18 hours, stripping our ships again, packing people into every available space. The Chaos Warband arrived while we were loading the last shuttles. Their ships were twisted, organic things that hurt to look at. Once Imperial vessels corrupted by warp exposure until they barely resembled human technology. They opened fire immediately, not caring that civilian transports were still evacuating. Return fire, I ordered. Cover the last shuttles. The Eternal Prophet engaged the Chaos ships, buying precious minutes while the final refugees boarded. We lost one shuttle, 300 people vaporized by a lance strike, but we got the other 11,000 out. Warp translation now, I commanded as the Chaos ships closed. We jumped into the warp just as their boarding torpedoes launched. Safe, for now. The pattern repeated at 6 more settlements. Each time, we arrived barely ahead of the Blighted Suns. Each time, we evacuated thousands of people while under fire. Each time, we jumped to the warp just as the Chaos Marines reached us, and each time, they followed. We were leading them on a chase through the most dangerous warp routes in the Expanse. Routes that Navigator Serena guided us through with her extraordinary skill, pushing the limits of what was possible. Routes that killed ships regularly. We lost the Fortune's venture on the 4th jump, a Gela field failure that let warp predators inside. The ship's screaming stopped after 6 minutes. 1,500 crew gone. We lost the Swift Prophet on the 6th jump, navigational error that threw it off course. It emerged from warp 3 systems away, too far to rejoin the fleet. 800 crew stranded, but we saved 37,000 colonists, got them out ahead of the Chaos corruption, delivered them to Imperial worlds where they'd be safe. The Blighted Suns were still chasing us. On the 8th day of our flight, Serena came to me with a proposal. There's a warp route, she said, that would lose them, definitely. It passes through a region where the warp and real space intersect chaotically. Navigation is nearly impossible, but if we can make it through, the Chaos Warband won't follow. They'd be insane to try. What's the mortality rate? 78% based on historical data. But Lucien, if we don't do this, they'll chase us until we run out of resources or make a mistake. This is our chance to actually escape. I assembled my senior staff, what remained of them after 2 ships lost. Navigator Serena proposes a high-risk warp route that could lose our pursuit, I explained. 78% mortality rate, but if we succeed, we save the fleet and the 37,000 refugees we're carrying. Mordecai looked old. 7 years of serving me had aged him beyond his years. Your father would never accept 78% risk. He'd find another way. My father's approach killed him at 53, I replied. I'm asking, what do you think? Silence. Then Krenkov spoke. We're already dead if we keep running. The Chaos Marines are faster, better equipped, and don't tire. 78% chance of death is better than 100% certainty. I say we try. Vex. The tech priest's augmented voice was thoughtful. The Omnissiah values boldness in service of preservation. We preserve 37,000 lives. The calculation favors attempt. Mordecai. He looked at me with those calculating eyes that had measured risk for 40 years. You're asking me to approve a venture that will probably kill us all. Yes. Your father would hate this plan. I know. Good. Then let's do it. Your way, not his. The warp route Serena chose was called the Screaming Gate by the few navigators who'd survived it. We entered it knowing we'd probably die, knowing that the warp's chaos would tear at our ships, our Geller fields, our sanity, but also knowing that if we succeeded, we'd save 37,000 people and eliminate a chaos threat. The journey lasted 4 days subjectively, 4 days of reality breaking down around us, 4 days of crew members going mad from warp exposure, 4 days of systems failing, ships screaming, the universe itself trying to kill us. I stayed on the bridge the entire time, watching our fleet disintegrate. The Bright Fortune lost its Geller field on day 2. We had to destroy it ourselves to prevent whatever was inside from spreading. 900 crew. I gave the order personally. The Merchant's Dream suffered catastrophic reactor failure on day 3, exploded in a bloom of plasma that lit up the warp's darkness. 600 crew. 2 escort ships vanished completely, just disappeared from our sensors. 500 crew combined. By day 4, we'd lost 40% of our fleet, 3,500 people dead, but 37,000 refugees remained alive in our cargo holds, and we were still navigating. On day 4, hour 18, Serena screamed. I ran to her navigation chamber to find her convulsing, blood running from her third eye. The warp was attacking her directly, trying to corrupt or kill her, but she kept navigating, kept guiding us through impossible paths. Almost there, she gasped. Almost through. The Eternal Prophet shuddered as reality reasserted itself. We emerged from the warp into real space, battered but alive. Behind us, the Chaos Warband tried to follow. 3 of their ships entered the Screaming Gate. None emerged. We'd lost them. We limped to the nearest Imperial world with our refugee cargo and our shattered fleet. Of the 9 ships we'd started with, 4 remained. Of the 7,000 crew, 3,000 survived. But all 37,000 refugees were alive. The Imperial governor met us personally. Lord Ashavar, you saved 40,000 Imperial citizens at tremendous cost to your own dynasty. The Imperium will not forget this service. I was too exhausted to care about Imperial recognition. Just take care of them. They've suffered enough. The refugees disembarked over the next days. Families reuniting, survivors grieving their dead, children who'd never known anything but running finally finding safety. One mother stopped to thank me, tears streaming down her face. My daughter is alive because of you, she said. Thank you, thank you. I watched her walk away and felt something I hadn't felt in years, pride that was untinged with guilt. Serena recovered from her warp trauma after 3 weeks of medical treatment. She'd permanently damaged her third eye. It would never see quite as clearly again. But she'd saved the fleet. Was it worth it? I asked her. Permanent damage to save people you didn't know? Yes, she said without hesitation. That's what being human means. Sacrificing for others. Mordecai approached with financial reports. Lord Ashavar, we lost 4 ships, 3,500 crew, and spent our entire operational budget on the evacuation. House Ashavar is technically bankrupt. But we saved 40,000 people. Yes, we did. Then we'll rebuild, take smaller contracts, live modestly, but we'll rebuild doing things our way. He smiled, genuinely smiled, which I'd rarely seen. Your father would have called this failure. But Lord Ashavar, I think you've succeeded at something more important than he ever did. What's that? Staying human while bearing the warrant. 10 years into my tenure as rogue trader, I was 30 years old and looked 40. The stress had aged me prematurely. Grey streaked my hair. Lines marked my face. I'd lost 2 fingers to frostbite during an evacuation in Arctic conditions. My body carried scars from a dozen close calls, but I was still human. Still capable of caring about the people I commanded. Still willing to sacrifice profit for principles. Still choosing to be different than my father. House Ashavar wasn't the largest dynasty, wasn't the richest, wasn't the most feared, but we were trusted. And in the Coronis expanse, trust was the rarest currency of all. Serena and I had grown close over the years. Not romantically, but something deeper. Partners in choosing humanity over efficiency. Allies in the fight against becoming monsters. "Do you regret it?" she asked one night as we watched the stars. "This life?" "Every day," I said honestly. "And never." "That doesn't make sense." "Sure it does. I regret the losses, the sacrifices, the impossible choices, but I do not regret choosing to make those choices my way instead of following my father's path. He died at 53. I'll probably die younger, I admitted. This approach costs more, burns faster, but at least I'll die human. You're assuming you'll die young. All rogue traders do. It's in the name. We trade everything: wealth, morality, sanity, life, for freedom. The question is what you get in return. And what did you get? I thought about it. Thought about the 40,000 refugees alive because we'd risked everything. Thought about the crew members who served us because they believed in something beyond profit. Thought about the settlements that prospered because we'd chosen compassion over calculation. I got to be the person I wanted to be, I said. Even when the galaxy demanded I be something else. That's worth a short life. She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. Then let's make it a life worth remembering. Deal. Rogue trader Lucien Ashavar died at age 43. He was leading an evacuation of a doomed world when a collapsing HAB structure fell on him. Crushed instantly, painless according to witnesses, too. He'd saved 8,000 people that day. It was his 147th evacuation operation. House Ashavar passed to his adopted daughter, Kira, one of the refugees he'd saved 20 years earlier. She carried the warrant for 32 more years, following his example of choosing humanity over efficiency. The dynasty never became the wealthiest or most powerful, but 3 generations later, historians noted that House Ashavar had saved more civilian lives than any other rogue trader dynasty in Segmentum Obscurus. Lucien's journals were preserved and became required reading at several navigator houses. One passage was particularly famous. The Warrant of Trade promises freedom beyond the Imperium's laws. But true freedom isn't the absence of rules. It's the ability to choose which rules you follow. I chose to follow the rules of compassion, honor, and humanity, even when they were inefficient, even when they cost me wealth and longevity, because a life lived as a monster isn't worth living, no matter how long it lasts. The historians noted that he lived 17 years longer than his father, despite taking more risks. They theorized that perhaps staying human provided its own kind of protection. Or perhaps Lucien Ashavar was simply lucky. Either way, when people spoke of doomed lives in the void, they spoke of rogue traders who lost themselves to the warrant's demands, who became monsters in pursuit of survival, who sacrificed their humanity for longevity. Lucien Ashavar was doomed from the moment he inherited the warrant, but he was doomed on his own terms. And in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, where there is only war, that might be the closest thing to victory anyone could achieve.
you.